All right. Thank you, Tim. Amin, guys. A pleasure to have you here. I'm late. I apologize. We just had a network halt on the Paloma testnet, and just dealing with that fire. But nothing like a EPOS merge to keep us excited. Thank you both for joining. Thanks to everyone in the community for being here. Thank you to the Paloma community. I know the network is halted. We love you. Thank you to everyone from Reflex Finance. For being hopefully maybe the guys who sort of point us to where the future is heading. Also, thank you to the Volume team. Thank you to the Cross-Chain Coalition as well for bringing us today. And with me, I guess I pulled Amin in via Twitter. So thank you very much, Amin, for coming last minute. I want to say thank you, Tim Swanson from Clearmatics, for also offering to join as well. We were super excited to have this chat because of what has happened and transpired with Tornado Cash. And it's kind of funny because Tornado Cash, being sanctioned, it's not like the OFAC hasn't sanctioned Ethereum addresses in the past. It's like here you go, but they sanctioned an app. And the real question, what we wanted to discuss today was, when we first had our chat with Tim back in June, Tim was like, dudes, you really guys should think about stable value. And the project I really think is cool is called Rye. And I said, Rye, I heard that name before. And he was like, yeah, Amin. And we went off on Rye, and Amin wasn't there. And then we're like, whoa, here we should have another conversation. And again, come back. And we did that after the collapse of UST, right? We had the discussion about Rye because we're talking about algorithmic stablecoins and the collapse. And now here we are, back again, talking about stables and OFAC. And our special guests today are Tim Swanson and Amin. And Amin, first of all, I want to say thank you guys for coming. So I'm going to start off by asking for introductions. And the agenda is I want to talk about the future of stables with regards to deplatforming or regulatory actions such as OFAC. And really, the question is that we want to answer at the end of this is can we ever get away from is really the issues about stables? Can we really design stables that can get us where we want to go? Or is it really going to just be about the laws? We're just going to have to change the laws and put money in political backing to essentially get elected officials to help us play the game because, the dollar controls everything. And I was hoping to start with Tim, introduce yourself, and let's go at it. Is that okay?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, and thanks again for having me. Really appreciate it. Great to be here. So for those who are not familiar with me, I work, I'm a part of the management team over at a company called Clearmatics. We got started just over, late 2015. We created a consortia that's now been spun out and turned into a standalone entity called Finality. And it initially started from this USC project with about a dozen banks. And it's created effectively a synthetic CBDC that goes live in October in the UK. They have a Bank of England's given them a master account. Again, our company Clearmatics is not formally involved in that at this stage, although we were the ones who created it. So wish them good luck. And we could obviously talk about CBDCs at some other stage. But I guess the primary reason why people have been reaching out to me the last couple of weeks is because I actually wrote about OFAC as it relates to kind of a surface attack on, it was at the time was about Bitcoin, specifically around color coins and master coins and stuff like that back in 2015. There was an interaction. If you just look up my name on Twitter or the numbers and then OFAC, you'll see a thread from 2015 in which a coin lobbyist was strongly against or opposed to my comment. And we could go on that, but I'll quietly hand the mic over by just saying that been following this space and writing on it for years. So happy to opine on any of these topics I just mentioned.
Thank you, Tim. Pleasure to have you. Amin, I don't know who you are. Who are you, bro? Debrief.
Hello, GM. My name is Amin Soleimani. I'm the CEO of SpankChain. I helped start Moloch DAO as the summoner there. As part of Moloch DAO, I had the distinct honor of giving Tornado their first and several of their initial grants and helping start it out.
Very cool.
And yeah, we'll talk more about that. Also helped start the Rye stablecoin. It's a fork of MakerDAO. The reason we started that was because MakerDAO had gone multi-collateral and started adding USDC and a lot more governance overhead. And I liked the original version, which was just ETH backed and didn't have as much governance. And so we made a version of it that not only was only backed by ETH, but also stabilized itself by moving its own peg in lieu of being fixed to any like specific dollar value, like almost all the other stable coins are pegged to a dollar. So yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to be here and talk about this stuff.
Awesome. All right, let's jump in. Okay, so, and thank you very much, Ramin, for giving a context. I hadn't known that you had funded the Tornado Cash team. I know Roman very well from my SF Bitcoin dev days, and saw him again at ETH Lisbon last year. These are very, very courageous guys who've done some amazing work. All right, so let's get to it. Question now, we saw the fall of UST and algorithmic stablecoins, and we started, Tim, we started saying, hey, Rye is definitely the future for, could possibly be a better future for algorithmic stablecoins that are not pegged to the dollar. In the intervening months, which has been about 20 years in crypto time, but about 2 months, we haven't really seen people sort of like saying, hey, people are talking about algorithmic stables, but it seems that what happened is people double down on the fiat-linked stables. Everything from USDC, money flowed, a ton of money flowed into USDC, and a ton of money flowed into USDT and the like. Then we saw, the Tornado Cash event happen, and now folks are sort of, navel gazing and saying, well, all is lost. Ethereum is now USDC chain. Is it your view that still holds that Reflexive Labs, experiment with Rye is even now more important, given the blocking of USDC, USDT, and of course any TRML Labs affiliated API that is using it, blocking those access to those accounts. Is it now more than ever we should be looking back and saying, hey, let's look at the question of stables, and should we again look at Rye?
Sure. There's a couple different dimensions to this, the events that are unfolding, right? So like the specific event that was shocking was USDC deciding to freeze the USDC inside of Tornado when Tornado was sanctioned by the government. And there wasn't actually that much money there. I think it was like $75,000, $100,000 or something.
That's right.
But what it represented was like a sort of wake-up call for the community, because I don't think most people had considered the idea of like a stable coin just freezing a contract outright without trying to deliberate between, who in that contract was the wrongdoer or something like that. Many of us have been considering that. I've worked on building DAO infrastructure for a while, and like I can tell you, you spend a lot of time thinking about like, oh, well, if this token gets frozen for whatever reason, like, will the members of the DAO be able to like pull out the remaining funds? And
right.
you
Exactly.
design around that. It's like a kind of annoying thing, but when you think of these things, as part of your software stack, you want to use things that are predictable and resilient over like a multi-year time frame, or else you sort of inherit, the U.S. government's like policy as a dependency in your like software stack. So it's like not great. Now, with respect to other stable coins, there is the direct risk of your USDC being frozen, which I don't think most people were surprised by. That risk had always sort of been there. But with respect to DAI, they had sort of been, promoting DAI, and I think I did as well, under the impression that maybe, it's less risky to hold DAI than USDC, because the chances of USDC freezing all of the USDC in that is backing DAI is like not that high, right? And the USDC backing is like a lot now. It's like, I don't know, over 50% in terms of the generated DAI. So freezing it would be a sort of existential risk and like lots of pain for DAI holders, probably basically a long drawn out legal process to like get it back, unclear any of the, timing involved in that. So it's basically like lost as far as, anybody's concerned. And that heightened the risk factor. And so now there's sort of two ways this plays out. One is like people start to look at stable coins like RAI that are backed only by ETH and don't have this type of collateral risk more closely. And, like whereas previously, the stable coins that don't have USDC have a little bit of a harder time staying exactly at $1, but maybe that's something that people are willing to deal with because they don't want the risk of it suddenly being unbacked if the entire collateral is frozen, for example. So people are starting to pay more attention to RAI-like stablecoins that don't have the collateral risk, and also like DAI itself is looking at changing how it works to work more like RAI in order to be able to shed some of its USDC collateral if needed. Which is
but just if I could jump in here. So first of all, thanks for that. I think one of the but here it is. I mean, I think people don't appreciate, but this is not just USDC, right? Like USDT would also respect OFAC and freeze accounts. All right. So, I mean, we're talking about, literally more than like the two biggest stable coins essentially are held and will respond to OFAC. And that's a powerful thing. Like, that's like, if you think you're safe in any fiat linked stable, you are not. Because if USDC and USDT follow OFAC, then shouldn't every other stable fiat linked USD contract or team follow OFAC as well? Would it be harder for them to say, well, hey, USDC, USDT, fine, we're just going to go the opposite direction? I feel like they would leave themselves open to even more risk. I don't know, Tim, is it your view that any fiat based or any fiat linked stable is really now OFAC respecting, like must abide?
So I'm not a lawyer, not a regulator. Happy to introduce people to that. I could speculate. And so here's the reason why I didn't do a victory lap last week. Not that I was in favor of what OFAC did or anything like that, but like I've written about this, like even as recently as last year with the parasitic stablecoins saying, hey, you have a existential risk to these real world assets, this exogenous capital, right? The USDC, USDT, because they were actively then blacklisting addresses, and now they're basically blacklisting contracts. This kills composability, which is one of the core selling points for public chains, right? If you have to
core selling point, it's the primitive. It's the reason why DeFi exists. It's our reason for being, right? Like we exist for this reason, composability.
Yeah. So if you have to start right now, they're just blacklisting addresses and blacklisting contracts. If the opposite happens, if you have to whitelist addresses and whitelist contracts, then you basically become a permission chain effectively on a permissionless chain with all the cost. Basically, it's a bad hydra. You end up with no legal recourse, but then all the things that you just talked about, right? So, I mean, like if you're going to go down that route, just go through the synthetic CBDC. I'm not pitching finality, but I'm saying like we already have that. We already know what that looks like. I've already spent years doing that. So it's an interesting world, but it's limited to traditional finance. All right. So the idea here with DeFi is to go beyond that, right? So I would suppose that yes, if USDC, USDT are required and mandated, then that is the question goes to what you and I talked about privately prior to this, which is the inconsistency of enforcement, right? So we've had in the U.S. the agency that's in charge of pursuing this is FinCEN, the Financial Crimes Network that's in the U.S. Department of Treasury, where OFAC is as well. And they only have like 30 people, and 5 or 6 of those are lawyers. So they don't have a whole lot of time to really. I'm not saying that these people are bad or stupid or anything like that, but they have a huge mandate to go after all sorts of criminals or suspected criminals. And so this, I can only suspect what hypothesize why they did this. But yeah, are they going to go after smaller ones? I won't mention names or whatever, but yeah, to be consistent, you would think they would. So I'm gonna be quiet at this moment because I don't want to step on anyone's toes about who should and shouldn't be enforced on.
Okay.
But yeah,
All right.
the consistency
Fine.
idea.
Okay. Well, here I'm going to ask Amin. Amin, is RAI OFAC resistant?
As an American citizen,
everybody's qualifying their answers today. And yes, Amin, you're not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. Go ahead.
I would think not sufficiently today.
Right.
I'm hoping to make it more so in the future.
Tell us why. Why sufficiently not so today?
I don't think very many stablecoins are sufficiently OFAC resistant today. I think RAI has a good chance of getting there in the sense that there's one angle where like nothing is OFAC resistant, right? Like if they
Correct.
put sanctions on it, the tornado deposits have like basically dropped off a cliff, right? Like even people in European countries who are not subject to these sanctions are like not interacting with this for fear of like downstream effects or whatever, right? So like in that sense, it's not resistant to like the chilling effect, right? Like if you want to talk technically, like could it survive if all of the Americans involved with the project could never touch it again? Almost. There's like a couple things that need to be done in order to make that better, which is like diversify the people running bots and like do the math on how many tokens are needed for governance and like who holds them and who's inside the US and who's outside the US. Like have a backup plan if the Chainlink oracles are sanctioned, right? Like Chainlink controls a lot of the price feeds in the space, and they're a US company subject to their corporate governance decisions, essentially operated by multisig. And so if they sanction you or your contracts, Chainlink can no longer service your data feeds. So you need to have a plan to switch over, and you need to have, the people who are able to execute that plan not be sanctioned by the government. They're like not in America, right? So it's like in Ethereum, you can build multinational smart contract deployments. You need to have operational resiliency to any of your jurisdictions rug pulling you.
Right. Okay, that's pretty bleak. And very humbling, and makes sense.
Has even fewer moving parts.
Right.
Like the relayers that service the transactions are largely optional. Like you can still use the smart contract deployed immutably. There's like front end code that's also static hosted on decentralized, storage networks and whatnot. And so like, it's not going down, and like you can still use it and generate the proofs and stuff, and you could even run it yourself if you wanted. But Tornado is just like a ZK Snark program on Ethereum, right? It was the second one ever deployed. Zcash was the first. But any stablecoin that has any sort of like Oracle price feed as one of its components, which is every stablecoin that I know of, like also has to like manage that kind of risk.
Wow. So if if I could reflect, if you need an oracle and the oracle can be sanctioned, or the oracle can be told that you're sanctioned, then, you're pretty much done.
It should be clear, there's ways of using like decentralized price feeds like Uniswap, TWAPs and stuff like that. They're not as good. They're sometimes more expensive. But it's like good to have them on deck. The main issue for something like Reflexer, we espouse on governance, right? So like we're trying to go in a different direction than most of the projects in the space that really hype up their governance, and we're like, we have a governance token, but we're going to call it an ungovernance token as a mimetic filter to keep out all the people who are too excited about governance, want to come in here and vote on stuff. Like, that's not what we want. What we want is to remove our ability to change anything as much as we can over time in a reasonable way. So like progressively remove, levers and knobs that we can use to change the system. We froze, collateral, it can only be ETH, but like oracles are one of those things you can never really give up complete control over. Because, who knows if in 5 years, like liquidity has migrated from Uniswap version 3 to Uniswap version 5, and you need to point the oracle to a new place.
Right, of course. Well, okay, so that is pretty huge, and that's a big list. What you're saying is there is a chance, but the operational overhead for teams to have to essentially manage their Oracle shutdown risk, as well as and making sure governance, of course, is still sufficiently decentralized, or at least delegated away from jurisdictional risky areas. And governance is also, more encouraged to not rug pull, and again, not looking for people who are happy for, excited about governance. These are kind of like the operational requirements needed for a team to try to make this happen. So the question I have, is there a future possible for us, or should we all just capitulate and, bend the knee to the USDC and USDT? Like, is this multinational stable future possible in a reasonable amount of time, or I'm just trying to
if you're asking me my views on the US dollar, I must warn you my views are quite harsher than almost everyone else I know.
We're curious. What's your view? Tell us more.
If you imagine the US dollar was a shitcoin, it would be like the most hated shitcoin on the fucking planet. Like, okay, so you start out like if you played this through with like MakerDAO, we're like, okay, we have a MakerDAO like US dollar system. It's pegged to the gold or whatever. Every other country pegs their thing to the dollar, and we call this Bretton Woods. In the 1970s, Nixon decides he wants to bomb Vietnam a lot. And so he prints a bunch of dollars. And so now a lot of the dollars are not backed by gold. And so the other European countries that were, holding a lot of gold, which they thought was backed by, or holding the dollars back, they thought was backed by gold, like sent battleships over to try and claim it from Fort Knox. And Nixon got on the news and was like, hello, everyone, we're ending dollar redeemability. That was phase one of the rug pull. If any crypto project today did that, we would laugh at them mercilessly for the theft that they committed against everyone else. Right. But we get a pass because we're the dollar. And so in the ensuing years, the dollar went on to create the petrodollar system, where we made deals with Saudi Arabia and OPEC and the oil producing countries of the world to exclusively sell their oil in US dollars. And whenever they didn't, we sort of bombed them or blew them up or replaced them with somebody else who would. And so that ensures that the US dollar, as much as we can, has a monopoly on seniorage revenue and builds up a whole bunch of artificial demand through this petrodollar Ponzi scheme. Right. Which leads us to our present day, where all of the dollars are backed by like dollar debt. And we're sort of at this end game of the US dollar Ponzi. And we're running out of places to bomb to try and make sure that they keep their dollars. And so we are faced with the choice, right? We have the choice. We can end the dollar Ponzi internally as an American people. We can decide that this is an abomination and it's not an American thing, and we're actually better than this, and we can earn the value that we extract from the rest of the world and not more or less steal it by exporting dollars.
So hold on. So what that's a big important note, what you just said. Essentially what you're saying there is a political problem. So really, we should politically. Okay, good. So,
but I'm going to make one more point here, which is that it's a politically doomed problem, and I'll explain why. Because the Ponzi is too entrenched. Everybody has U.S. dollar-denominated debt. It's more or less unthinkable to even imagine the level of reform, the financial reform that would need to take place in order to end the U.S. addiction to the dollar.
Right, but hold on, deep breath, because remember, we're still in crypto, right? So the question is really, if it is so dire, and it is so dour, and it's so disastrously destructive, do we have an alternative that does crypto and does our efforts here in this space allow us to try to craft a direction out of this, entrenched system, or are we ourselves in the crypto space without hope?
Yeah, so I will address this point. I think that what we are essentially doing here is we are building like central bank-like systems up from first principles.
Correct.
And when we look at our systems and we look at what the systems that exist were, it's like, what the fuck did you guys do? Like, you can't even make sense of any of this. Like, the more I've learned about this, the more I'm like, holy shit, you're in the dark ages of central banking. This is all a fucking scam. You know? Like, you would not run your bank this way. You pick any external reference asset and you, like, change the value of your currency relative to that. You don't end redeemability, go full Ponzi, and then just give people more money for having it. Like, the whole like creating dollars out of thin air is supposed to be your like liquidity last line of defense, not like your main monetary policy tool. We have everything backwards.
Question. We in the crypto space, let's get back to it. I hear you. And we're not, again, we're all here because we want to do different. We're all here because we're tired of the same old, same old. For us in the DeFi, cryptography used for financial transactions, cryptocurrency space, peer-to-peer financial transactions. Are you saying, yes, we have a path? Or are you saying the mountain is too big? The mountain is too tall?
I'm saying, yes, we have a path. Like Rye is actually, in my view, and maybe the few people who get it, like, I think, I posted a tweet and it was like, until Rye is in textbooks as like the turning point for the theory of central banking, like we are still early. Like nobody even gets how this stuff works. So like even just having Rye and having it enter these conversations and present it as like an alternative for how these things can work, both in terms of stable coins on Ethereum, and then that's like winning Detroit or something, in terms of like getting bigger. You have to win like the DeFi hearts and minds and like explain how these mechanisms work. And then, like, maybe one day if it works for DeFi, it'll like work for the rest of the world.
Okay, so here's my question. Last question. Amin, we had collapse of UST. We had this tornado crash in USDC, essentially blacklisting the contracts. Would you say these are more reasons why we should again, continue to learn about Rye, explore it, understand central banking, understand how this entire systems work? It's a leading question, which of course has only one answer, but the question I'm assuming you're going to tell me the answer that I want. Should we continue along exploring Rye and what promise it holds as an alternative where we are today?
I've never felt more vindicated in working on this project.
Perfect. Awesome. And that's the question that is the answer we wanted. Now to Tim. Tim, I know you're working on the CBDC stuff. Question for you, Tim. Final words in terms of where this is going. You were the one who pointed me to Rye and really, had me take a look. Are there any other examples, anything else you're seeing that says, hey, here are ways to look at alternative ways to look at stability and protecting stability in crypto?
Yeah, and just to be clear, I'm personally not working on CBDC stuff. I follow it closely, and we spun that project out. But
thank you.
Here, let me show a little bit for Rye-like systems, and without saying specifically Rye itself. Otherwise, people call me Raisha, which is fine, I guess, at this stage. Like the reason why, if you are into the DeFi religion, as it were, if that's the world you want to live and operate and work in, which is fine. The reasons that you should care about Rye and similar systems that may be built are the needs for resiliency, the needs for a native unit of account, and those two alone we could talk for forever. But the resiliency part has been very much well covered in the last 20 minutes by Amin and yourself. The native unit of account, I think, is also really important, because if all the DeFi world is importing exogenous capital, then you're going to be importing the, like Amin pointed out, the rules and ideas and the policies of other central banks or other commercial banks or whoever's the minter of whatever currency you're importing, and that seems self-defeating to me if the idea is to build a resilient system that's not dependent on traditional finance, if you're having to continually work with outside real-world assets that have to be held in custody somewhere. And you know that you're like literally the grandpa of all this, Tarek, with digital
tangible.
trust.
I know, right?
Yeah.
I know, right?
So, but we should do a podcast on that sometime, and bring Pierre Rochard on for sure. That's a big joke there.
Very funny. Very funny.
Yeah. Those 2 points, I think, are the takeaways. I would encourage people to check out Rye and hopefully some similar systems as this ecosystem grows.
I'll jump in and add one more point, which is like the automation. So the thing that makes Rye unique is that it uses a controller to set its like the rate at which it adjusts its peg.
Yeah.
We call the peg the redemption price or the target price, and we call the rate at which it moves its peg the redemption rate or the target rate. And so that's expressed in like interest rate terms, like 10%. Yep. Right now it's like minus 12% or something. And the cool thing about Rye is that we don't have to have meetings to set that rate. Right. Like normally in like the MakerDAO world, they have to like have a meeting and like set their stability fee. And like the Fed, when they set their interest rates, they like have a meeting and they set their rate. And so we're running another experiment, which is that we just set a formula, which is a type of PI controller, stands for proportional integral, has 2 terms. They get added together. One takes into account the like current price deviation. One takes into account the historical price deviation. And you add them, and then they spit out like an interest rate. And it's cool. The whole thing is automated. We I don't have to wake up in the morning and like submit a proposal. Like the formula reads the price inputs and like spits out a rate without having humans in the loop. And I think that's a very good system generally, and I want to see like that specific part of it scaled up to other like DeFi systems, as well as like I think that's how the Fed should work. They should use a program that more or less determines what the rates should be given the circumstances, and then they can argue about which program to use or which formula to use, and not like what the rates should be every 2 months.
And then you kill a bunch of careers as like career bureaucrats with PhDs in economics, man. That's like I gotta find a new job.
Find a new job. Codies, man.
That's right. Become engineers. Amin, thank you for the last word. We want more Rye-like systems. If you're on this chat, please check out Reflection Labs. Jump into the documentation. It's amazing. It's well written. You can check out the price of Rye on CoinMarketCap. It's there. And I hope, Amin, that you have indicated, and we see more folks in DeFi space continue to take this up. Tim, special thanks for you and the Clearmatics team for having you join us today. And thank you for your insights. Because of you, I hope more people are learning about Reflexor Labs, learning about Rye, and also that Amin, the founder of SpankChain, has given us, what could be essentially who else but the founder of SpankChain can give us this, right? Like this is like amazing.
To be clear, we did this because we had problems with banks.
That's right. Accepting payments. That's right.
I used to hold like 1.5, several $1 million of the initial DAI supply because we like couldn't get a bank account, and so I wanted that back. And like I think it's important to have systems that don't discriminate, because sex workers are often discriminated against.
Agreed. And in support of again people being able to to hold value wherever they are in the world. Totally agreed. So thank you guys. We ran on long. Thanks for everybody for listening. We went a little bit over time. Thanks Amin. Thanks Tim. Thanks Reflection Labs, Paloma community, Volume community, Cross-Chain Coalition community. You guys rock. And please come talk to us, the Cross-Chain Coalition on Paloma, about this. And please join the Reflexor community. Participate, learn. Let's make sure the Rye and Rye-like type systems continue to grow and give us another way forward. Guys, have a great day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Bye-bye.